I bet you weren't even sure where the Eastern District of Virginia federal court was, let alone what's happening with the hand-picked, I just became a prosecutor in the last month, Lindsay Halligan. What's going on with her cases? What's going on with Letitia James, the New York Attorney General? What's going on with the former FBI Director James Comey? Well, we do it in about 10 minutes or less on the Legal AF podcast, top-rated law and politics podcast in America. Here's a clip.
Let's start with the good old-fashioned Virginia weave. The firings in Virginia relating to these indictments, particularly New York Attorney General Letitia James, but also tangentially related to the Comey case. You have the Comey case moving along on that rocket docket in federal court in the Eastern District of Virginia. The prosecutors, I guess, who picked the short straw from the North Carolina federal district, who parachuted into Virginia. I'm not sure if they fully knew how bad that Comey case was going to be for them and their careers, but they've been begging the judge, could we have a delay? We don't want to turn over the discovery right now. We need some more time, Judge. The judge basically has been rejecting the Trump prosecutors over. No, you filed this case. You get ready. And Comey's won most of those motions. So why don't you start by talking about the Comey motions? Why don't you talk about the firings related to New York Attorney General Letitia James? And then if you want to weave a little bit up north to Maryland, you can do that. You could do that and talk about what's going on with John Bolton there, where he was charged in the Maryland federal court. You can handle it.
Take I-95 right from Virginia to Maryland or back. All right, let's start with
unless missiles are being shot over it, like in the West Coast.
Trust me. I mean, I almost thought I was going to have to do this podcast tonight from a bomb shelter. You know,
you're literally there where the missiles are being shot over.
I'm in San Diego.
Yeah.
Right near Quantico. All right.
Weave it.
I'm weaving. Eastern District of Virginia, once proud member of the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was actually one of the first federal districts created in 1780 and 87 or 1789, and is now has been set aflame by Donald Trump, who is demolishing with a wrecking ball the Department of Justice, its leadership. He's installed sycophants and shadow attorney generals like Ed Martin. Lindsay Halligan has apparently decided that she's going to side with Ed Martin. There's a war that's broken out between Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche on one side and Kash Patel, Ed Martin, and Lindsay Halligan on the other. Lindsay Halligan has decided to take a wrecking ball to the Eastern District of Virginia, being manipulated, I'm sure, by Ed Martin. And now we've got the 6th or 7th major leader in the Department of Justice's office in the Eastern District of Virginia being fired, including one that I predicted. I thought every time I recorded about Beth Usey, the major crimes prosecutor who let it leak that she was not going to recommend a case against Letitia James because there wasn't a case against Letitia James. As soon as we saw that, and 72 hours later, an indictment that was obtained by Lindsay Halligan, I said, whenever I started recording about Beth, I said, I'm not sure she's still there. We might have to update this on Legal AF Substack Live. And now she and her number 2 have been fired from that office. That's a badge of honor, by the way. And I applaud Beth Usey for taking a stand against the depraved, retaliatory conduct of Donald Trump to go after his political enemies and critics. Comey on Monday. You know, when I'm traveling between the time zones and the days, I forget where I'm at. On Monday, there will be at least 2, if not more, motions that are going to be filed by James Comey. How do we know? Because he said it aloud in court, and he made a court filing to tell us about one. One is going to be, I am sure, about what we call prosecutorial abuse, which is vindictive prosecution and selective prosecution about this case should never have been brought. Many of the things that have been turned over and have had to be turned over to the Comey side, the former FBI director and U.S. attorney, includes and has to include the interview notes of people like John Durham, the special counsel, who for 4 years investigated everything related to James Comey and said there's no case, and told that to the career prosecutors in the Eastern District before Lindsay Halligan arrived. All that stuff, all of those interview notes and witness notes and things, all of that goes into the exculpatory pile that Comey uses to prove that he's innocent if he even goes to trial. In the meantime, he'll use it to support his vindictive prosecution motion to the extent, I think that's why the judge forced them. They were asking for the Trump administration, like, we need more time. We need another week. He's like, no, motions are due on Monday. Your discovery is due here. You turn over your documents there, and we're going to trial on Jan 5. And that's Judge Nachmanoff. That's it. We're going to trial, whether you like it or not. And that's certainly what the defense wants to have happen. The first motion, that is the one I just talked about. The second motion is going to be a motion to disqualify or declare illegally appointed Lindsay Halligan as a U.S. attorney who's the only person to sign the indictment. Therefore, the indictment must fail. This is similar to, but not exactly like, what was used against Alina Habba. That's going to be heard this week, or I think it's coming up this week before the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, about whether she was illegally appointed. Slightly different because how they were appointed was slightly different. But under the way that we believe, and the argument that I'm sure we're going to see on Monday, the way that we believe Lindsay Halligan was appointed as the interim U.S. attorney for Virginia, or Eastern District of Virginia, it's a single use. You only get one appointment for that, and then it goes to the judges of that particular district to pick the U.S. attorney until there's one that's confirmed through the Senate. They already picked one. His name was Eric Seibert, a conservative Republican. Trump fired him because he wouldn't indict Comey and Letitia James. That's it. That was the one pick by Pam Bondi. Second pick goes to the judges. So they've already given notice last week, the Comey side, to the judge. Get ready. We're filing this on Monday, and you're going to have to send this to another judge outside of the Eastern District of Virginia, because everybody's effectively disqualified, because they're going to pick, if we're right, the new U.S. attorney. So that process I assume, has already begun. It means when they get the motion, Judge Nachmanoff is going to have to send it to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals Chief Judge, Judge Diaz, who sits over Virginia. He then picks another judge somewhere outside of the Eastern District of Virginia. It could be in Virginia, just not in the Eastern District, or in places like North Carolina, and he assigns it to that judge. Similar to what happened to Alina Habba when her New Jersey motion got sent to the Middle District of Pennsylvania to be ruled by a judge there. So this is all going down. I mean, they're going for the knockout punch early, Ben, with Halligan. And I don't know about any other indictments that have been coming out of there besides Letitia James and Comey, but certainly this would apply to anybody else that gets indicted by her. And the reason she's by herself is because first of all, there's no career prosecutor left. They've all been fired or resigned at the top leadership of that office. And so she's left by herself. Even Ed Martin isn't sitting next to her. Even we don't see Jeanine Pirro or anybody from DC driving down to help her. She's completely by herself. So that's on the Comey side.
And Popok, I'm going to throw it right back to you. But what's interesting too is that kind of makes her a witness, in this. So, and we see how horrible she is in court. I mean, people who have described her in court,
rocking back and forth.
She doesn't know how to talk in a courtroom. So she could be put on that witness stand and be grilled about what'd you do? When did you sign up? Did you know this? Did you read this? Were you authorized? She's going to be on the witness stand. I just want to make that point.
No,
he's an idiot.
That's also very good. I call her instant prosecutor. She spent more time in hair and makeup than she's ever had in a federal court, let alone as a federal prosecutor. So now she's got her hands full with Letitia James, because if you thought the Comey indictment, which nobody can understand or make heads or tail out of, and was and then you have the Letitia James one, which had typos over it, and you already have the new reporting coming out where, and I just want to make sure people understand this. Letitia James was indicted because she's a political critic of Donald Trump. That's the reason. That's what Rob Bonta said to me today during our live stream with the Attorney General of California, working closely with her. This is Donald Trump trying to round up his political enemies and critics. Get ready, Ben, and put them in prison. As any good dictator would do. That's all that we're watching. Because when you look at the 30-year prison sentence that she's staring at, and you look at the facts, she bought a second home. That the bank that gave her $100,000 for this very modest second home in Virginia that apparently she bought for family members, knew it was a second home because she's the New York Attorney General. She doesn't live in Virginia. And so there's no, of course, fraud there. And then somebody, not her, likely a niece with power of attorney, checked a box that said she wouldn't be renting it out. Okay. And she's not renting it out. Family members are staying there. And that's it, folks. We got a mortgage fraud of epic proportion over $18,000 because Letitia James is big-hearted and is letting her family stay in a house she purchased for them in Virginia. Now you wonder why Beth UC quit or effectively got herself fired for not bringing this case. Look, there's a difference between, and we'll get to it, the Bolton indictment brought by career prosecutors in Maryland who checked all the boxes to at least get a legitimate indictment out against Bolton, a investigation that started under the Biden administration. This is a Biden prosecution, if you will, not a Trump one. That's different. That's completely different than this frame job against Letitia James that nobody would sign on to and still haven't signed on to other than Lindsay Halligan. There's an arraignment coming up this week, middle of the week for Letitia James. She's going to plead not guilty. Her lawyer is Abby Lowell. You and I are going to be talking. We could have a drinking game. How many times we're going to be saying Abby Lowell's name because he's like the lawyer of choice for many targets of Donald Trump. He's representing Lisa Cook. He's representing Letitia James, and I think he's representing Bolton, right? So he's got them all. He's got a trifecta there. So Letitia James arraignment, she's not going to be perp walked. They're not perp walking anymore. I guess that's fallen out of favor. And then I'm going to take the car up to the Maryland. Whole different set of prosecutors. At least this was career prosecutors who looked at it and made it clear we knew coming in that based on the raid of his house and the pickup of all of his electronic devices, we knew weeks ago what the argument was going to be, that he had been keeping diaries, not just in writing, but electronically, that contained top secret and classified information, even after he no longer had that clearance, and shared that information, according to the indictment, with members of his family, as a lead up or a ramp up to a book that he was going to write in 2020 called The Room Where It Happens. And they also cut and pasted in some emails that they showed to the grand jury that demonstrated that John Bolton knew, and as the people that received it knew, that this was confidential information and should have been encrypted, and they didn't do it, and all of that. That is, with 12 or 15 examples of when they didn't list it, but 10, because it's, that wouldn't be appropriate on the public docket for right now, but of times when confidential, classified, even human intelligence information was shared inappropriately. How do we know about all this? Because in paragraph 14 of the indictment, it says that while America was hacking Iran, we saw in their servers AOL emails and diary entries that they had obtained from John Bolton because they hacked John Bolton. John Bolton had confessed that he had been hacked to the government, but didn't say that he had been keeping a diary of top secret information. And so because we had that was allegedly the delay in the indictment, they had to tell the Iranians that we had been peering. So we were willing to compromise of diplomatic relationships and or our surveillance operations in order to indict John Bolton. Now, look, that's the indictment. The guy pled not guilty. He said, his lawyer's already, on the trail talking about, look, he's done what every civil servant who's been at the highest level of national security for 40 years has ever done. He kept diaries. There's nothing. He hasn't done anything different than anybody else. And just as a side note, before I shove it back to you, Ben, who's a notorious? No, that's the right one. Who is a well-known diarist? Joe Biden. Joe Biden had volumes throughout his entire career up on his shelf of like leather-bound, handwritten diaries, even towards the very end, that he kept about all the rooms that he was in where it happened, whether he was senator or vice president or president. I mean, just copious note taker. And it looks like, yes, he got caught up in a couple of boxes that were in his garage or in his center that should have been returned or not returned. And all of that with the special counsel at the time. But this may be different in that Joe Biden didn't digitize these things and like send it to people as he was writing a book. So Look, as I've said, if John Bolton did something wrong and compromised national security, even though he's also a political enemy and critic of Donald Trump, then we're going to let the chips fall where they are. Although it is suspicious that now they've gotten around to trying to chill his speech. What do you think about it?
I just think this, John Bolton is George W. Bush's guy. Like, let's not forget who John Bolton, not some liberal hero, or like, this guy was Trump's national security advisor. This guy's a Trumper guy who was there, and he's like, man, I could really deal with George W. Bush, but when it comes to Donald Trump, this guy's like a total fascist. And they had a falling out. Remember how Trump says, I pick the best guys? Like, I don't want to conflate who Bolton is. I'm glad that Bolton was outspoken against Donald Trump, and I think that we should always have an open door to people who expose the criminality and the fascism that exists. But like, I don't want to make Bolton out to be like some crusader for my worldview or perspective. So let me just kind of, put that number one. And it seems that lots of Donald Trump's enemies are the people who work for him, who see his behavior. So let's just put that out there. But then I just think this is one of those situations where it's not like the Comey case and the Letitia James case. I could say these are the dumbest cases, the most frivolous, the most vexatious, nothing there, and the government's going to get absolutely embarrassed. That's obvious. On the Bolton one, my view is, Bolton wrote a book on this. Bolton is, relatively, I would be surprised if he truly was kind of that sloppy where he was giving away things that were national security information just because of his history in the national security apparatus. To me, the fights, Popok, here will be over parsing, was this the Trump regime saying, no, this was classified and confidential, while they're out there posting videos of put it this way, Donald Trump's in the Oval Office saying the CIA's in Venezuela right now. Okay. We're doing covert operations in Venezuela. He's out there saying that. So to me, what the case ultimately comes down to, and this is going to be a confusing one for the jury, I think, and why, I think Bolton will have good arguments here, is I think Bolton's going to say this stuff's not like this is not national security information. This is not highly classified stuff. This is the type of stuff that I put in my book. So if I put it in my book, I could share it with my family. This is not to that level, but we'll see. We'll talk about that, and we'll follow the case. But I draw a slight distinction between Comey's case and Letitia James' case and this Bolton case.
Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. We call it Legal AF for a reason. See if you can figure it out. Join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network, on audio podcast platforms of your choice, Spotify and Apple, here on YouTube. Commercial-free versions over on the Legal AF Substack, where for less than $7 a month, you can become a member and help support our journalism and independent commentary. Same thing on Legal AF YouTube as well. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.